can somebody, maybe like someone like Rob, maybe speak for what you guys were, the themes of your discussion?
I will try to address that. Thanks. It was an interesting gathering. I'm a UVA, University of Virginia alumnus, but wanted to merge for critical mass, and it was an interesting mix. And of all things, from I think the primer from Erica, talking about leadership during these times and innovative ideas, and MJ and Eddie's primer of things, and MJ's company in addiction. We had sort of a transparent leadership dialogue on that, and what's going on in our society now, and what we can do about it, and finding forums like this to be a useful use of energy and leadership guidance. MJ, I'm gonna transfer it to you to kind of finish off the other half of that.
Yeah, I kind of echo what Rob was saying. I think that as we continue to progress, either in a good way or in a bad way or whatever, right now, one of your interns, Jace, I think, I don't know if he's on.
Yep. He's on day 2.
Gave some statistics showing how devastating the people affected by mental health. There he is. Hey, Jace. And great contribution. Mental health is something that within the addiction community, if you could take what's going on right now and the challenges that people have and multiply it by 10,000, it would still be the underestimation of the century of the pressures that people in addiction and early recovery. So mental health right now has to do with, and we talked about Michael Phelps and him standing out, and the tremendous strength in vulnerability and saying the 3 words that nobody wants to say, I need help. And that's where we really need to get at. We need people to know that it's okay to ask for help, and it's okay, and it will actually help somebody else for you to take a stand and tell people that you're going through challenging times.
And Kevin Love too has this initiative. I don't know if we talked about that with you. My daughter somehow got through a chain, is now involved because he had a mental breakdown. Well, let's move it around the rooms. How about Michigan?
So we really focused on we didn't have a specific topic that we were talking about except for Michigan and beating up a little bit on Joe about Ohio.
You were an Ohio State person into that room.
But we went,
I should have thrown Joe Starncheck in there too.
We did, we have a lot of commonalities in terms of the types of business and some crossover. So there's potential for some of us to be doing business together as a follow-up. And then we touched a bit about our different locales and COVID and just really trying to understand, continue to wrap our head around that. I don't know, Mark White, if you want to add anything to that.
No, it was just a very casual, connecting conversation, I think. And I think there are all too few of those that are happening, despite the ability to use Zoom. So I thought it was just productive getting to know people.
I'm just curious about, in terms of COVID, Noel Strauss, how's Arkansas these days? I haven't really looked at the statistics.
Yeah, as a state, we were pretty high on the rate of infection, although the nominal number of infections never really got very high. I think statewide we have about 6,000 active cases, and it's upticked a little bit with the universities opening. University of Arkansas, which has got about 30,000 students, is on campus, and so there's been some caseload coming from that. But generally, it's been, we never shut down. Our governor did not order shelter in place at any point. We have a mask order, but restaurants are taking people in the dining rooms, and We don't have a big public transport system here really anywhere in the state. So really not much infection spread through anything like that. And it's just been slow. And, Little Rock is a place where we don't see the big highs, nor do we see the big lows. But traffic is definitely a little less than normal.
Somebody who, I think he recruited you for swimming, David Hinkle, was he part of that recruitment program at one point? But he had COVID. He was in ICU.
Wow.
For several days. An early person, really was a wake-up call for me. He also played, for everybody, he played Michigan football. I think he had like 10 seconds of time on the field, but he played Michigan football.
Yeah. It's really hard to, I've heard all the anecdotes everybody else has heard about younger, healthier folks who get it and get it very bad. Mm-hmm. But, statistically, if you look at it, it seems like it's really, I don't think we've had a case in the state of Arkansas where somebody under the age of 25 has actually passed away from it. We have about 1,200 fatalities in the state. So it's definitely an older, unhealthy population that's exposed, that's at risk.
Well, let me just continue to go around the room. Is that about Denison? Actually, let's start with the Russians before they, since they're in different time zones.
This is Vadim. We talked about the need to stay young or to stay in touch. It's not possible to stay in touch with younger people, right? The overall mood. Hey, we just talked about the disease and who got it and who got into an ICU, and many conversations of family offices are on that topic. Oh, the world is changing, something's changing, we got to figure it out. Everybody's getting sick. This is not the conversation that 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds are having. The world is like it is. Nothing is falling apart. This is just the world, and they're just continuing. They're just figuring it out on a daily basis. No strategy, no strategic thinking, no, oh my God, what are we going to do? They just figure out ways to continue to do the business. They figure out ways to, if they're a startup, figure out ways to restart revenues, to reorient the product and to stay in business.
Isn't it a self-selected crowd? You're dealing with startups.
It could be a self-selected crowd, but what I'm trying to say is, the kids, 35-year-olds and younger, probably don't get the seriousness of the situation, but they, on the other hand, they have this energy and they have this ability to figure things out very quickly on the go. And so people 50 years of age and older will be we all agreed at least on the breakout group that it would be very useful for all of us to stay in touch with the younger people and pick up of some of that energy and some of that nimbleness.
Fair enough. Then Denison, did he do?
Okay, I was given a clear directive from Tom that I have limited time. I also want to let everybody know I did give other people opportunities to talk in the breakout, contrary to popular belief. So what we focused in on, we actually did end up talking about the questions. We ended up talking a lot about the mental health, what's going on around mental health, and making sure that we give attention to that from the stress standpoint, compassion fatigue standpoint. And then as we talked about that, and as everybody got excited about the tree and what Erica presented, there was a robust conversation around whether or not organizations are going to be making choices of how they're going to invest resources in this area. Are they going to invest resources in people? Are they going to invest resource in mental health? It's where are the resources going to go? And then the bottom line, once again, all comes down to implementation. How are things going to be implemented? And in the implementation, also looking at going beyond just the implementation, but being able to look at the unintended consequences that may arise. So you go one step beyond. And I think we were really blessed because we did have a student in the forum, in the breakout, and it was really cool getting his perspective. And one of the things that he said that Adam is really encouraging is making sure that students go outside. While the weather's good in Ohio, get yourself outside, social distance, but don't stay indoors. And again, a focus on, they're doing a lot of focus at Denison on well-being, mental health. So if anybody else at Denison wants to jump in, and I think, Tom, did I do that okay?
Wunderbar.
Okay, other thoughts across, I guess that's, you know, we don't have to talk about these particular topics, but one thing came out of Denison is we have, it's a small school with under 10 students per professor. So we want to get the professors in here in different ways. We started to do that in 2017. Professor Kaboub put it together, talked about MMI. What was that? Monetary, I'm bastardizing it. Anyways, I was like, what is that? And then he did a Zoom. I couldn't join the Zoom, but we started to have these professors to teach the alumni what their domain expertise. I mean,
would like that.
Others could.
That would be great.
So, you know, any debate, I think as we do more, fast forward next month, hopefully this we'll have more than Denison, Michigan, and the rest of the world. By the way, we have something called a playbook, which I'll explain to you. Actually, Michigan State, and now Joe's going to bring it to St. Lawrence. Right, Joe?
Sure.
Very excited. Sure. Anyone else with thoughts before we go back to our regular way? Or maybe we're going to change our regular way with these new enlightenment.
I have to say I love that you have been able to include some current students in the discussions periodically. I think that's really important element to continue to think about.
Yeah, no, they teach us. I didn't even know what Facebook was until my first intern, 2005 or 6. I was an early Facebooker. But speaking of that, on the session that Erica led, it came up, everybody, or let's say half the crowd seemed to have seen this thing. It's a new Netflix documentary on social, what is it called? I'll look it up. Social
Dilemma.
My wife and I are going to watch it tonight. She works for Google. And one of my old roommates just said, you just like, brace yourself. Who's seen it? Right. Can you tell us about it, Raylan?
Well, it's not for the faint of heart. And it's, largely a conglomeration of whistleblowers who talk about the targeting of our populations who are vulnerable, maybe as it is for different reasons, and how they go about it. So it's an eye-opening watch, and I think it will be a start of perhaps a revolution even.
Against the social media powers?
Well, so we talked about in our group, it all starts with self-awareness, right? And if people are self-aware where they're spending their time and energy, and I know we had a visiting professor when I was at Denison, and I'll never forget, she taught us to always ask, what work is it doing? What work is it doing? And so it's really an attempt to teach people what work is it doing within us, within our children, within our society.
And Joe Starncheck, you also pointed that out to me, didn't you?
Yeah.
What's your takeaway from it?
I haven't seen it yet, but I thought it was interesting that it's popping up now.
Yeah. Any other words of wisdom, Joe?
I haven't seen. Oh,
Go ahead.
no, sorry, Joe. Please.
I brought this up in our group is the fact that we actually have to manage our mental health as a, through all aspects, whether it's your personal life, your work life, what have you. How you think about how many people spending 8 hours a day in front of their computer screen, looking at their phones, living in an area of 12 million people or 9 million people. I mean, and you wonder why, we have such mental health issues. It's pretty clear what's going on. I mean, and one of the things I mentioned to I've been back in Granville, staying with my mom and trying to help her navigate through a stroke. And I talked to some of the nurses, and they said, "Yeah, we're seeing a mental health epidemic across the country, and it's you have to manage it. It's got to become part of our lives." And it's funny because we've learned so much in the past 30 years about mental health, but in the past, when we growing up, mental health was it was the crazy people. Well, shit, we're all crazy living in a area of 12 million people or 9 million people, hanging out in front of a computer for 8 hours a day. So that's got to become part of our lives, personal and professional, I believe.
Yeah, Joe, I totally agree with you. I mean, Mark, as you know, I mean, I took a vacation a couple weeks ago, and all I did was shut off my phone for
Right.
9 days. And honestly, it's just because I've constantly been glued to a screen for the past few months that I just needed to like take a break and walk away from it. And I felt like a totally sense of freedom just from such a small act. But in so many ways, I do think, I mean, like that. I haven't seen this documentary. I'm looking forward to watching it. But one of the things that I know I was talking to somebody about it yesterday, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product, right? And so many of these things, are free software, Google and Facebook and Instagram and all this stuff is, there's value in our data, right? And yet, and people are monetizing that in different ways. And yet at the same time, they have the smartest people in the world figuring out how to get us to spend more and more time on these devices, right? And that's a dangerous thing, I think, in a lot of ways for our own mental psyche, because this is a relatively new thing over the past 20, 30 years, and we're not really sure what the side effects would be of it.
This is Rob. I'm going to offer sort of an opposing, sort of a positive opinion, actually, that I think the exercises, if done right in mental health prep or what have you, can make one stronger. And I think in this virtualness could be, not just a significant tailwind in COVID recovery, but in the new normal. So, you mentioned some of the big tech companies. I think in our breakout, we talked about Zoom itself, and Eric was on something last week, the CEO, and making happiness as part of his mantra. And Mark, to the point of you and Eric of taking walks, taking breaks, and then recharging, but then getting more done. I mean, this assemblage of people from around the world, no one had to book a hotel room or airline tickets, and to have effective communication. I'm just saying I recognize the early points on the mental health side, but at the same time, it could be used as a tailwind in terms of operations, business opportunity, and and some alpha creation.
Totally agree.
Yeah, guys, on this topic, I would urge you all to watch a TED Talk by a guy named Chris Bailey. It's called "How to Get Your Brain to Focus." He speaks exactly about what Joseph kind of started this little piece of the discussion with, about disconnecting from your devices and the effect that has on the brain.